Playing a Blackguard in Dungeons and Dragons, playing a fallen paladin. That's what we're going to explore in this vlog. And we're going to build that checklist to try and look at this character from a lot of different perspectives, because this is something that you don't often see in Dungeons and Dragons. Usually it's the paladin that gets all the light, right? The paladin is front and center in the party. Lots of different ways to play a paladin. And this idea of kind of flipping that in reverse, and from the perspective of a dungeon master, of course, asking the question, if you have a somewhat good aligned party, the rogue means well, just out for some loot and some treasure, and the mage wants power, but generally speaking, the party is aligned good. If you have a Blackguard in the party, how would you represent that? How would you play that? So let's explore that from a character perspective, from an avatar perspective in D&D. My opinion is we don't want to have a polarity in character classes. This idea that if we're looking at Paladin and Blackguard or Paladin, anti-Paladin, where the Paladin only plays good and the Blackguard only plays evil. I mean, in that case, if it's a really evil character, unless it's an evil aligned party, the party is going to disintegrate, because for the most part in Dungeons and Dragons as adventurers, you're doing good. You're trying to solve problems in the world, and Blackguard is trying to possibly create problems in the world. So we want to get away from that one dimension. What about playing it closer to a paladin? The structure. So imagine if you're a paladin and you were dishonored and you want to take revenge. And in order to take revenge, you become a Blackguard. You kind of resign yourself over to those powers, and that's the justification. I find the most interesting Blackguard characters that I've seen played, the classic alignment, the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons alignment, lawful evil. I mean, I know alignment isn't important in D&D anymore, but if you look at old school D&D and AD&D, how they describe alignment, there's some interesting parameters. And this idea of lawful evil being, you're not a nice person, but is completely justified because of these rules. So this idea of a paladin becoming a fallen paladin and legitimizing it because they were wronged, their order was wronged, their family was wronged, they need to take revenge, and that's how they justify it. You know, very much the ends justify the means. So you have this anti-paladin Blackguard vehicle, but the question is, are you really evil? Another interesting perspective that I saw a Blackguard played was where the character went from paladin to anti-paladin and was transformed, but it was not against their will. So they found themselves, operating with these dark powers and under that influence, but it was part of a greater quest. It was part of a greater character development. So personally, they operated in there, but they did their best to utilize those powers for good. Again, trying to really get creative and turn things around rather than just being like, oh, I'm a dark knight, I'm the bad paladin. Well, using that for various good purposes. Another idea was, of course, the various powers and forces of the anti-paladin / Blackguard, exploring that from the perspective of warring factions, just warring factions and serving a patron and utilizing that, advancing that, but within the scope and framework of a paladin or knightly order. So in exploring that, much like all of the character classes, they don't have to be one-dimensional. It's the background, it's the biography, it's the story that really guides your character. If a player came to me and said, Fritz, I want to play a fallen paladin, a Blackguard, absolutely. Let's come up with a story. Let's figure things out. If you want to be one-dimensional and just play, the classic chaotic evil Blackguard, I don't think you're going to last very long. There's a reason for that. Just with the adventuring party trying to do good, various other factions in the game working against you, unless it's a specifically evil-aligned party, which I would say is pretty rare in D&D. We should kind of explore that idea next. Then in that case, playing a Blackguard would be challenging But the question is, of course, how can we utilize this as a creative template and go beyond just the player's handbook, go beyond just the text of saying this is what a character is?